Hi everybody, I was just about to check if I had anything in my teeth in the mirror, so I'm very glad I delayed that for a few seconds. Hi everybody, welcome to Probably Nothing, the online show by the Eve Appeal. This is the last episode of Series 7, so Series 7, Episode 4. Thanks so much to everybody that's watched the previous 3 episodes of this series. If you're joining live now, come in, welcome. And if you're watching on catch up, like the Eve Appeals version of BBC iPlayer, then thanks very much for taking the time out to catch up on what we're talking about tonight. So the series Probably Nothing started a couple of years ago now, because at the Eve Appeal we run a free information service called Ask Eve, and we were getting lots of people coming to us saying, sorry to bother you, it's probably nothing but, and then go on to explain or ask their gynae question. And whilst for most of the time, most symptoms of gynae cancers, most gynae concerns aren't anything serious, so most of the time that probably nothing is nothing. But for about 60 people every day in the UK, they're diagnosed with a gynae cancer, and that probably nothing is something. And we wanted to create a platform, a space, environment, whatever you want to call it, where we can put out informative conversations. So I interview somebody each week based on whatever topic we're talking about, and hopefully we can put out information in an easy to understand, accessible way that's helpful for people. So this series 7, we've been speaking about the menopause, because if you are diagnosed with a gynae cancer when you're premenopausal, i.e. haven't finished your periods yet, treatment will often mean that you do go through the menopause. And also the other side of that coin, and the way we started with the series, is talking about symptoms of gynae cancers post-menopause. Because apart from cervical, the other gynae cancers, womb, ovarian, vulval and vaginal, are all more common in people that are post-menopause. So the average age for going through the menopause in the UK is about 51. So throughout the series, we've been speaking about postmenopausal symptoms, managing with early menopause, fertility options if you go through menopause because of gynae cancer. And to end the series, we wanted to speak to people that have real and relevant and lived experiences of what we've been speaking about all series. So my first guest, and I've gone 1 minute over how long I said my intro would be, sorry, naughty girl. My first guest is the wonderful Mandy, who was diagnosed with womb cancer at 54. So I'll bring in Mandy. Hi, Mandy.
Hello.
You got the hint. Thank you for joining us, my dear.
Thank you. Thanks for asking me.
So I said at the beginning, we spoke about in the beginning of the series, postmenopausal symptoms. So things that people really should look out for when they've already gone through the menopause that could be a sign of one of the gynae cancers. Then we were like, oh, okay, we need a lived experience of this. Who are we going to ask? We're going to ask Mandy. Wonderful. Can you please start us off with just kind of explaining a bit about what symptoms you had and how you came to go from Mandy without womb cancer to finding out that you did, in fact, have the disease?
Well, it goes back to I started going through the change 3 months after the age of 50.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when really you could say that the menopause was having having an effect on me. And then it really started, I'd say, going back to January 2018. I was 54 at the time, and I'd have to say, I kind of had the mood swings. I felt, hot flushes. I had kind of, occasionally felt irritable, I kind of the menopause symptoms. But at the end of January, I was at a works event and I had a heavy bleed.
And you've had periods for a while, right?
I've no periods since 3 months after the age of 50. So I'd had nothing at all. And I was at a works function. Fortunately, I was dressed in black, quite unusual for me. I'm usually bright colours.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. Very good.
The only thing I can say, that was good. And I sat down having a meal with a group of people. And then when I got up, I was in a hotel, got up at the end of the night. I made my way back. I felt something strange. That's all I can say. I just didn't feel there was something right. And I felt wet. I didn't know until I got back to my bedroom, went into the bathroom. I took off my clothes and my pants were wet. I put them into the sink and it was blood.
Were you
And then I thought,
surprised that it was blood? Had you thought
yes,
you'd
I was. I was kind of, have I cut myself? What have I
Yeah.
done? Because I hadn't
Where's
had
this
a
coming
period
from?
for so
Yeah.
long. And I thought, this is bizarre.
Yeah.
So, you know, you have a shower and what have you. And I just thought, and that was it. I had nothing else. I had nothing else at all. And it was kind of, and then it's kind of niggles you then. I was away from home and I'm thinking, well, I wonder why I've had that.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought,
So you said you didn't have anything else. So like, you know, when you put your knickers in the sink and were like, oh God,
yes,
it's blood.
yes.
Were you still, let's get graphic, Mandy, were you still bleeding at that point? Or was it just the bleeding, like when you were in the
It was
shower?
just one. I'd have to just say it was all I can say, and this might sound strange, it was like pulling a toilet chain.
Yeah.
That
Just
was
one
it.
gush.
Yes, one gush, and that was it. And that was what it seemed odd to me. I'd not heard of it ever being mentioned. I thought, well, maybe these things happen, and it's not just something we've spoken about in a group of girls or a girly conversation as you have. So yeah, it just didn't seem quite right. And I remember getting up the day after. I felt fine. I felt as I always did. I was always quite flush, particularly if I had a drink. Once I'd started the menopause, I'd got really bright red. I'd go as red as the top I have on now. No word about, you know, that's no word of a lie. And then when I got home, I happened to be I have regular conversations in the evening at weekends when I meet up with my mum. And I mentioned it to my mum. She said, that's not right. And I said, but mum, it can be, you know, there is an age difference between us. And I said, well, mum, I'm sure no, that doesn't seem right to me. I think you need to go to your doctor. Well, this conversation with my mum didn't stop. And this was the end of January when it happened. And it was, it went on for a period of weeks, I'd have to say.
Do you think you would have gone to the doctor sooner if you'd carried on bleeding? Like, do you think you
yes, I think I
put it
would.
to the back of your mind because it was just
Yes.
the one, just the
I
one?
think because it was the ones, I dismissed it really.
A one-off, right? It could easily.
I just thought, you know, these things can happen, Mandy. You know, you're on the change. You can be on it for a period. I'm sure that's all it is. And I'm sure all it is for many, but that's what was in my mind. But my mum kept saying, it was like something on my shoulder, Mandy, you need to go. You know, you do need to go to your doctor. And I thought, right. I thought, I do need to go to my doctor then, you know, I will have to do. And then I thought, who do I ring up and where do I start, you know, with this? My mother-in-law had died in 2016 with ovarian cancer as a diagnosis, but she went in direct into end of life care. So we didn't have the experience, the understanding of what that meant in many ways. But we were under the same doctor. And a good doctor, I'd have to say, a good local doctor.
That's lovely to hear, yeah.
It really is. And I thought, I'm going to ask for this doctor. So I rang up the doctors, asked for the doctor, and I got booked in straight away.
Did you just say, like, after I've gone through the change, the menopause already,
yes,
and bled,
yes,
is that what you,
And I actually, when I went along, I actually said to him, I'm here because my mum's told me to come. I mean, that sounds ridiculous.
What are you, 12, Mandy?
And I'm 54 at this point. I'm thinking,
Yeah.
Andy, you've never had to get your mum's permission to go to the doctor. But I felt I needed to because I didn't feel it was anything to bother about.
Yeah.
And I think
And you didn't have any
to
pain or anything? No pain or anything?
No, nothing.
Yeah.
No, not a thing. No,
and did you think before you went to the doctors and when you were booking the doctor's appointment and stuff, did you ever think like, oh God, it could be cancer? Or were you just thinking, I'll get this seen to? Like, it wasn't thinking, gosh, I'm going to go and hopefully rule out womb cancer. None of that.
No, in some ways, I hadn't, to be quite honest, I'd never really gone into all the 5 cancers, the female cancers. I'd never explored it, never thought about it. It had never honestly crossed my mind. And it didn't cross my mind that it was cancer, in all honesty. Not at all. So when I went along and he said, no, that's not quite right, Mandy. I said, right, so like, what do we do? He said, well, can you come for some blood tests tomorrow? I went along for the blood tests and they were fine. Nothing at all, nothing untoward in the blood tests. They came back very quickly. And with that, he said, I'd like to send you for a scan.
Mm.
And that's what started, I feel, my journey, you could say. Yeah. I think I think once we go on this, it is a journey, and it was a journey for me then. And I was fortunate because I have a good consultant, equally a good doctor, and equally a good consultant.
So you got the process, the pathway started quite
Yes.
quickly once you made that first call.
It was. Yes, when I went along, I had a number of scans, different types of scans. I had a coil fitted, and that had to be removed. So you have to go through these, your scans. I went through my scans, and I remember going back for the results on my own because I just presumed there'd be nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And I didn't even sit down while the consultant told me, because I just thought, I'm going out the door. He said, I've something to tell you. And I said, fine, I'm going back to work with almost my hand on the door. And he said, no, you need to sit down. And I can only remember him saying to me, we didn't expect it to be, but we found it's the early stages of womb cancer. And I said, what? Are you sure you've got the right person? And he must have said my name. He must have thought, she's not taking this, because I weren't taking it in. I just thought,
your notes, check the names right on the bit of paper.
Yes, can you just recheck, please? And he said, no. He said, and I said, but and he said, no, you're not overweight. You're not. And I said, well, how come? And then he said it was the thickening of the wall of my womb.
Womb lining,
and I'd never even thought. I didn't know what that meant.
No.
It just never crossed my mind. And then it just seemed to be, time to then, take it in, come back home, wait till my husband came off a shift. So I felt like I'd almost wait 24 hours before I spoke to my husband, and then my family and my work. And then before I knew it, it had a month, and then I was in for having my operation. And that was very, very quickly.
Very quickly. And
very, very quickly.
So you have, not to call you common, Mandy, but you have quite a common bit. We're friends already. But you have, so lots of womb cancers are discovered the way yours was discovered. Typically, people are postmenopause. Typically, there will be a bit of postmenopausal bleeding, and that's exactly what happened to you. So, what would you say to kind of help us with the sort of awareness side of things, in that we really try and encourage people to, if you've got bleeding, and then we're talking in your case postmenopausal bleeding, please, any bleeding after the menopause, go to your doctor, right?
Definitely. I mean, I feel fortunate. I've got a mum, and my mum listened to something I told her that I didn't originally take any notice of. Thank goodness for my mum.
Thank God for mum,
Absolutely. Mum's the word, bless my mum, because if it hadn't been for my mum, I don't feel my womb cancer would have been found at an early stage.
Sure.
And I think we've got, as women and men, we've got to understand we know our bodies. And if we know there's something not right, doesn't matter what it is, we need to go to the doctor. We need to tell somebody else. And it's at that being a professional.
Yeah.
And I think really I should have gone sooner. And I shouldn't have waited, because it could have been at a different stage had I left it any longer. And I think, you just don't know. And I'm pleased that I reacted and I went. But then at the other side, I was foolish for not going without, having my mum telling me, nagging me to go.
But we all react sort of in different ways or go down different routes, don't we? So I don't want you for 1 second thinking, oh, you were foolish, because you weren't. you weren't at
No.
all. But I do understand where you're coming from, but you weren't. And also it's so important, isn't it? Because you had that one bleed. I can imagine. Yeah, you only had one thing one time. That really shows that compared to some of other symptoms like a persistent vulval itch, for example, for vulval cancer, it doesn't have to be this thing that's hanging around all the time. For you, it was one gush of blood once.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, I think to myself, Mandy, it was only once. So, and I think it's almost like, whatever that is, if it's not right, and I'm fortunate I had a good GP. I have a good consultant, in equal measures. And I'd have to say their promptness, their, working with me to make me cancer free. And although I'm under my consultant, I'm still under my consultant, back with checkups. I feel that, you've got your second chance to some extent. Yeah, Mandy, I definitely do.
You are so lovely. And also, before I say bye to you, even though I could talk to you for much longer, thank you. So, because also, Mandy, you're doing lots of stuff with Eve and for Eve. So we're really grateful that you're kind of one of our champions, and not just through this episode, but in many
I'm
other
more than happy to tell my story. If my story helps someone else, whatever that is, in whatever situation, please don't leave it. Please tell someone, and please make that a professional.
Mandy, thank you so much. Thank you, my darling.
Thank
See you later,
you.
Mandy.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. So, we've spoken to Mandy about the kind of symptoms post-menopause, because most gynae cancers are more prevalent in people post-menopause. But we also, in the series, focused on going through menopause, early menopause, because you've gone through a gynae cancer at a younger age. So now I'm going to bring in my lovely next guest. You've got two for the price of one tonight. Very lucky audience. It's the lovely Jessi, who will come in a second. And Jessi we're speaking to because Jessi was diagnosed with ovarian cancer when she was 26, so has gone through menopause. That's why we've got you here, isn't it, Jessi?
Yes. Well, still going through.
Let's get into it then. So, what happened? I was about to say shoot and then a swear word, but I don't want to get this out. So, you were 26. What happened, babe?
So 26, Christmas Eve.
Oh God.
I know. We're supposed to be going for Christmas Eve drinks, and then the night before had basically just had like a completely mad pain that I've never felt in my life. And I mean, this is a very long story, but basically, to cut a long story short, I was diagnosed in an emergency where I then had to have the tumor removed, but they didn't know it was cancer at that time. And then fast forward 6 months, it kind of went from stage 1 on that initial thing to suddenly it became stage 4. I then had chemo and surgery. It then came back 3 months after chemo and surgery again.
Just 3 months.
Yeah. So it was obviously, I mean, chemo resistant, I suppose. And then at that point, it was like, let's try a kind of slightly experimental combination of leuprorelin, which is an injection that like suppresses all your hormones, and then letrozole, which does the same thing but in a slightly different way, as far as I understand. And then also metformin, which is like a repurposed diabetic drug, which I suppose is the kind of more experimental part. And I was pretty, I suppose, not feeling massively hopeful about this treatment.
I don't mean to smirk along with you. This is such a serious. We're just like ha 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 ha.
No, but it's
you can't laugh. What can you? I'm not laughing.
Well, no, exactly. No, it's true. But it did seem a bit mad in a way, because I was like, so we've tried the strongest chemo on offer and surgery, but then these sort of estrogen suppressants are going to manage to contain it. But that was the only option. So that we gave that a go. And then 2.5 years later, I'm still on that combination and still have like stable scans, and they're still doing their thing. So I've now been in medical menopause for 2.5 years. I'm still in menopause now.
Yeah.
And have a kind of interesting relationship with it, I suppose, because it's not fun, but equally it's sort of saving my life. So
it's hard to be grateful for something that's been taken away, but you kind of, if it wasn't taken away, then you would be in a worse situation, right? It's like a funny thing. The medical menopause. So can you tell me like a bit about what happened for you to go through menopause? Was it the chemo? Was it those drugs that put you into the menopause? Was it the surgery? Like, how did you end up?
So it wasn't the surgery, because I only had one ovary removed. My type of cancer, it's a really weird, like rare ovarian cancer that doesn't really behave in normal kinds of ways.
You're telling us you're special, Jessi. I get the hint.
I know. So basically, it's essentially, it seems to be either like one of two things. Either it always attaches itself to one ovary and it doesn't tend to bother with the other one. So 90% of women get away with having what I had, which is like that one ovary and the tumor removed, and then they just go on their merry way without anything else. And then about 10% have like a spillage in that operation, which is what happened to me. And then it kind of jumps from like stage 1 to stage 4 and seems to kind of seed itself somewhere else.
That's interesting. I was going to ask when you were saying about stage 1 to stage 4, I was like, I'm going to go back and ask about that. So if there wasn't the spillage during surgery, it would have been stage 1 because it was contained, popped out, it came out with the ovary, put in the bin, that's that. But the stage 4, the spillage meant it went, and then that's why it went from 1 to 4. It's still inside you basically and covered.
Yeah, exactly. So I was still, so basically because of that, I haven't had to have, even though I'm stage 4 ovarian cancer, quite unusually, I've not had to have a hysterectomy at all. So I still have my womb, I still have my left ovary. But it's stage 4. So I wasn't.
Sense, Jessi.
I know. It's kind of like, because it's quite unusual. Like that wouldn't happen. That would normally be one of the first things that you do. You'd kind of.
So are you still having periods, or is that a silly?
No. So I wasn't in a menopause until I started these like menopause-inducing drugs.
Fine. Okay. And when you started the drugs, because we've spoken to the lovely experts that obviously we need to make the world go round and the gynae world go round, but I haven't actually spoken to somebody that's got on the show that's gone through an early menopause because of gynae cancer. So like, do you sort of have the first lot of treatment, like the first time the drugs are in your system and that's the thing that's going to make you go through the menopause? Do you kind of get a hot flush straight away, or does it kind of take a while to sink in?
For me, it was I mean, not literally like bomb, but it was like within, like the first week. That was like the first thing that happened. It was like hot flushes. And they were quite extreme at the beginning, but they then sort of dissipated. And now I have them nowhere near as intensely as I did in the first sort of like 6 months. Because I mean, I don't know whether this is like across the board happens, but I don't know whether it's just your body kind of adjusts to like the new normal for it. And it seems to kind of slightly even out. But sometimes it's sort of, I definitely remember feeling quite low as well, like mood wise. But again, it's almost been so long now that I think that's what I think's almost the hardest thing with being in a medical menopause, I'd say, is that often you're not really sure what's that and what could be just life. Like, you know, like I definitely feel like I have more fatigue. I definitely feel like I'm a bit clumsier, but like mood wise, particularly, I have no, like, I don't know if I was taken off them, suddenly I'd be like, whoa, I'm so much happier.
Life is great. So you had like the hot flushes and the low mood and stuff. Were there any other sort of symptoms? Did you suddenly? I'm going to ask it, Jessi. Did you suddenly think, oh my God, my vagina is so dry, or anything like that?
Yeah. So I was going to say, I think that's probably for me like the worst side effect, I would say, is that obviously a dry vagina is not fun.
Won't put it on a Christmas list, would we?
And it's kind of a bit, because, you know, like, you sort of just have to adapt. Like, you know, there are like, but I think what's also hard is if you're in my situation, you can't have hormone replacement therapy. You can't have like local estrogen, which normally is what would help with the dry vagina. So you basically can't do any of those things. So the only like kind of weapons you've got is lube and like vaginal moisturizer, which do definitely help, but equally they're not like magic, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't. So I think
sort you out for half an hour, but not. It's not like,
and even then, I think psychologically it is difficult. Like it is difficult adapting, like in terms of your sex life, because it's not really that sexy, and it's obviously a bit of a reminder of, you know, the cancer. And so I think that's probably the thing I found and still find the most difficult, is having to kind of accept that that's just what is going to be, and there's not really much you can do about it other than make it a little bit better. But then I don't want to like scare anyone into thinking, like, you know, like into not doing it because of that, because you do adapt, and like, but it just takes a bit of time and support, I think.
You can still get pleasure, but it's different. Things change.
Yeah,
Your body is different to it was pre-cancer, right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
You mentioned the like the moisturizer and lube and stuff when it's dry vagina and sex situation. Is there anything, if anyone's watching, that's kind of going through anything similar or thinking, gosh, how am I going to cope with going through an early menopause? Is there anything, and it's fine if there isn't, but was there anything that you were like, oh, that's a great thing or tip or thing to do, you know, like managing ways of early menopause?
Yeah, I think probably the best thing that because I'm in a long-term relationship, and I think probably the best thing I did, which we waited, I feel like maybe we should have done sooner, is that we did some like couples therapy and kind of went through how it had impacted it in that way and generally. And I think I definitely recommend doing that if you're in a long-term relationship with someone, because I think we just thought that we'd sort of, you know, I don't know, like somehow just sort of like work it all out ourselves, and actually like it is a big thing to go through.
It is. You're 26. You were 26 and you know, diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. Like, of course, it's not going to only massively impact your life, but also the people closest to you and the person having sex with you and sharing your body and your life. It's huge. It's huge. So you found that really, really helpful.
Yes, yeah, and I think that's probably the thing I'd most, because I think what it also showed me is how psychological sex is as well, and how much that plays a role in terms of, and obviously, you know, if you've got a gynae cancer and you're having to run in and put vaginal moisturizer on, like inevitably that's going to bring up emotions and feelings that neither of you are particularly wanting in that time. So I think it's just like working through some of those feelings, and the kind of, I'm a big believer in that like mind-body connection as well, and I think that's something that I've kind of learned a bit more as well, and those sort of, I suppose, things you can do that connect the two in helpful ways.
That's a really interesting way of putting it. Things you can do to connect the mind and body. And if somebody's listening and again, like going through or about to go through something similar with their treatment and stuff, what, other than kind of like coping mechanisms, what would you, I'm not going to ask the same question with Mandy, like about sort of symptoms and getting yourself to the doctor, because yours was kind of a different and more sort of complicated route to diagnosis. But what would you say if anybody's kind of, about to go through something similar and is kind of thinking like, oh God, this is a sack of SHIT. I don't know what to do. I'm scared. Is there kind of like, what would you have said to yourself if you could go back, sort of?
Oh, that's a tough, I mean, I think, to be honest, in a way, I know this is almost counter advice. It's not counter advice, but I think in some ways, I think what I would say is that it's okay to acknowledge and also realize that it is hard. And like, because I think I kind of, because I was comparing it to chemo, which was obviously physically much, much harder, so a much bigger impact on my quality of life. I think because of that, I almost sort of was like, oh, well, this is absolutely fine. Like in comparison, this is absolutely fine. I can do this forever. And it's, you know, it's all good. And I think that was, you know, that's probably not actually the best way of dealing with it, is to try and just almost diminish what you're going through. And I think I was very much diminishing the whole thing. And I still, in a way, I think do now. Like, you know, I almost forget that I am on active cancer treatment because it somehow seems not like chemo, or, you know, it's not as obvious, but actually it is still a cancer treatment. And I think, you know, make sure that you kind of get the support that you need and don't diminish that it is going to impact your life and it is going to be difficult. But the last 2.5 years, in comparison, you know, they've been like some of the best of my life, because it's allowed me to do all these things that, you know, I couldn't do on a more, I suppose, intensive treatment. So yeah, I think that's whatever I would say.
That is perfect. It's the cheesy but true, like, acknowledge what's happening, live your life, like don't hide away. It's tough. And that's okay. And it's okay to say that, right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Jessi, I've gone 1 minute over again. Oh, I'm so bad. Although I hate that we've just spoken about like your stage 4 cancer journey. I hate like a journey, you know, oh God, we hate that word, don't we, in the cancer community? Like, but I do need to go, and I feel bad for cutting you off because I could again like 3 times as long. But you are a darling. Thank you so much for like working with us on this. And people should follow Jessi on social media because she's also a great filmmaker as well. I'm just plugging that. But yeah, I'll say bye to you backstage. But thank you so much, Jessi.
No worries. Thank you.
Bye. Oh no, now I'm 2 minutes over. Okay, right. Thank you so much to everybody that's watched live. If you're watching this on catch up, thanks for taking the time. I hope you've enjoyed this series of Probably Nothing, speaking all about menopause at the different stages of life, whether it's early menopause because of gynae cancer or symptoms of gynae cancer post-menopause. And the biggest thank you to my guests this series, and particularly Mandy and Jessi, who came on tonight and shared their own personal experiences of gynae cancer and menopause and how it's impacted their life. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. We couldn't do this series without you, and see you very soon for the next series. Bye.